Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Interesting little kerfuffle over at West Point as the Commission on Naming. I didn't even know they had a naming commission, but a commission that names stuff at West Point having a little problem. They're deciding on whether they should strip Robert E. Lee of the honors at West Point. Now remember, he was the guy who kind of led West Point for a while. Before the Civil War, pre-Civil War stuff. He was actually, something of a, on the right side of something. But there's a lot of facilities there named after him. There's a lot of stuff with his name on it. They're now going, maybe not such a great idea to have a traitor's name all over everything. And it's been one of these things that interesting to me over the years, even through all my education years, asking the question, why is it that we seem to honor the Confederacy, the part of this country that wanted to rip us to shreds? And why is it we make this pilgrimage to places like Gettysburg and then do the both sides-isms? Like justifying why we had this uprising of treasonous people who wanted to rip this country apart. Why do we go through that exercise? The only country in the world, mind you, that does this. And the justification was it's our history. We want to honor the sacrifice of people who fought for their beliefs and, all this stuff. Now we're in an interesting moment. And I'm curious what people think. Should we continue to honor the treasonous and honor the folks who wanted to rip this country apart? Or, do we teach what actual history is? These are people who wanted to destroy this country. They wanted to create their own to where we would constantly be on a border fight all the time. Should we? Now, the reason I bring this up and the reason I start with this is because you've got Lindsey Graham, who over the weekend said that, if Donald Trump is indicted, if there's a prosecution of Donald Trump, for doing something that if any one of us did, not only would we be in jail, we'd be under the jail. They'd lock us up and throw away the key. He says if that happens, if we hold him accountable, if we hold Trump accountable, riots in the streets, riots. And it made me think, is this him speaking of hoping? Idle threats going, we'll show you, or is he in on the calls? This is one of those moments where, you go back to, the Lincoln speech. And it made me think about, the Lincoln speech where he says, by such examples, by instance of the perpetrators of such acts going unpunished, the lawless in spirit are encouraged to become lawless in practice. And having been used to no restraint but dread of punishment, they thus become absolutely unrestrained. Is this not what we're seeing? If you don't punish people for their acts, they're only going to get worse. And I'm looking at the Civil War folks going, okay, we worship. There are people who worship them. And I know people are saying, we water the tree of liberty with blood of tyrants and patriots. We're going to take up arms and fight for the country we want. And all this nonsense. Lincoln goes on, while on the other hand, good men become tired of and disgusted with a government that offers them no protection and are not much averse to a change in which they imagine they have nothing to lose. Thus then, by the operation of this mobocratic spirit, which all must admit is now abroad in the land, the strongest bulwark of any government, and particularly of those constituted by like ours, may effectively be broken down and destroyed. I mean, the attachment of the people. this is where I'm kind of worrying. When you've got a sitting senator, saying, hey, if someone's held accountable, if one of my guys held accountable, riots, actually calling for violence in the streets, because that's how I view this. And I'm curious your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. I see this as him calling for, I'll tell you, if he's held accountable, because that's what they do. This is that kind of signaling. And it's frightening. Because here's what's interesting. I think most people are now going, it's probably likely Trump's going to get indicted. Now, I'm still on the, I don't know. I was on the never going to happen. I'm now in the, I don't know. These are bad things. This is real criming. Not that all of the other slew of criming that went on for the 4 years he was in power, not that was any worse, but this is real national security kind of stuff. We still don't know what he has done. We still don't know who wandered into the Golden Palace. We still don't know. And this is one of those moments where I'm curious where the thought process is. Because again, I'm still trying to figure out, like Karl Rove, and again, Karl Rove, never in a million years thought I would agree with Karl Rove, who is stumped on why it is that Trump would have these documents. Why is he holding these materials? Why? He said, quote, why he's holding on these materials when he had no legal authority to do so under the Presidential Records Act is beyond me. And I'm in the same spot. Absolutely beyond me. But let's go to the phones. Let's get Jim in Chicago on line one. Jim, how are we doing today?
Good, Rick. How are you?
I'm living the dream.
As far as the statues go, it's interesting. Here in Chicago, they took down the Columbus statues at two different locations, the most important of which, to most folks, was in the Little Italy area around Taylor Street. You can say what you want about Christopher Columbus. We were taught one thing in school, I think similar to you, that he discovered America. Then there was a train of thought that Amerigo Vespucci maybe discovered America. I don't know which is true. Sometimes I don't know what to believe, actually, the way things are today. But I think the issue with the statues is it's somebody of Italian descent. It's somebody that we were led to believe that maybe was a great person, maybe he wasn't so great, but it doesn't take away the issue that they're a proud people, and it's something that they have. It's something that says, hey, this somebody of our ethnicity helped to take part in the founding of America. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but I could certainly understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, that's a whole different topic, and I'm not really sure where I go on this. Like you, I was taught that he was a great guy, he was an explorer. We find out rapist, murderer, maybe, possibly, all those horrible things. I'm more concerned about, the Civil War stuff. I mean, it's amazing to me that this is stuff we know, and we have created this both sidesism where is there any other place in the world where traitors and people who tried to commit treason and tear a nation in half is still being looked at favorably? Has that ever happened anywhere else but here?
No, and I agree with you 100%. That it probably should have been done a long time ago. But again, most people in this country aren't as enlightened as other people in the world. And as far as Lindsey Graham, I agree 100%. When you start to say that kind of stuff, you just put that kind of stuff in these goofy people's minds, and it plays on them. And we've seen it with some of these people just of late, charging the Capitol, whatnot. But the bottom line, I think, is on that I think here is where these people will fall in the line. For the folks that kind of are looking to do something like that, believe me when I tell you, the military and the National Guard and the FBI and all these other folks, they have a lot more than you have, and I would probably think that anything that would get too out of hand would be quailed pretty quickly.
Well, that is the hope, isn't it? But I've got friends who believe that the military has taken a rightward bend, And and the hope is, especially on the right, and I've got militia type friends who believe that when push comes to shove, the good militiamen and the good military people, they're going to choose the right side this time, is how it has been told to me.
My hope would be this then. I'm sure you probably saw the movie V, Vendetta.
Yes.
I would hope that the way things would end would be the way that movie kind of ended, where the people and the masses and those of us that are on the right side marched towards these folks and they just stood down. I would hope that would be the case.
I'm with you. Appreciate the call, Jim.
Thanks,
good stuff.
Rick.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. No, look, this is one of those questions. It's an open question. I don't have all the answers. And on the Christopher Columbus thing, I mean, that's, again, I was taught a completely different reality of what's being said today. And, that's one of those things. As a society, we should be having that conversation as well. But for me, the treason angle, kind of a big one. Let's go to line 3. We've got Alice on 3. Alice, how are we doing this fine day?
Oh, we're doing well.
What's on your mind?
I find it just amazing that the party that loves to tell us what big patriots they are, defenders of the Constitution, and the party of law and order are the ones that seem to not have a problem thinking and speaking it out loud, that the rules and laws don't seem to apply to evangelicals or Republicans. It's just amazing.
It doesn't matter to us. It's only you, Alice, that the laws apply to. Only you and like you, because you can't be trusted.
Absolutely. It's just amazing. And, this thing with the Civil War thing, if you recall, the Civil War, when it went through Reconstruction and then when Reconstruction ended, so it was probably around the 1880s that we started to see this revision of the Civil War. And by the time that, what's her face, Margaret Smith, I don't know, but the one who wrote Gone with the Wind, we were in the full-blown going, oh, the poor South, they were victims of Northern aggression thing. And we have all these people brought up on this belief that, of the poor South, and it was a great war and blah, blah, blah. And the point of the matter is, when you come right down to it, the South were really ticked off because they couldn't have slaves anymore. They committed treason. They are the ones who started it by firing on Fort Sumter. And now we're told, well, these were heroes, and we're supposed to watch them. It's just amazing.
With you. Appreciate the thoughts, Alice. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
No, again, I go back to this. I remember, going to Gettysburg as an 8th grader, and the history teacher, taking us there. And this was an exciting moment for him. I mean, this was a great battle. And, he knew, like pieces on a chessboard, how everything moved. And it was like this great moment. And I remember at the time going, people died in horrible ways. The person who gave the tour, talked about the suffering of people on both sides, thousands of people just suffering and dying so rich people could own other people. It's basically what this was. Poor people fighting so that rich people could own people, which is really bizarre. Frightening to me, where the wealthy have all these resources to control the minds through their F channel and all the other crazy outlets that people are addicted to. This is getting them riled up to do kind of the same thing. At least that's my view. Let's go to the phones. Got Kurt on line 2. How we doing this fine evening, Kurt?
Doing good, Rick. How about yourself, brother?
I'm hanging in there. What's on your mind?
So, it is frightening. And what I find interesting is it will be interesting to see the people that are going to be for this Civil War were the very ones 2 years ago when they saw riots in Minnesota, Portland. They got all up in arms seeing liquor stores being burnt down in a minority community, up in arms of a mattress being burned on the street up in Portland. And now they're going to be the ones on that side. So to me, I find it really interesting to see how they really do all this.
Yeah.
And it's funny how they will just switch from going from that to being that.
You know what else is
Wow.
interesting to me? While you've got the Lindsey Grahams out there cheerleading this, do you know who won't be in the streets fighting? Lindsey Graham. And this is my problem with all of this
Exactly.
stuff. These elitists who keep stoking these fires, and I predicted the day they launched Truth Social that it was going to go broke, and that Donald Trump was going to stiff everybody involved, and that I'm waiting for the press release from Devin Nunes whining that he hasn't been paid since the beginning and he is suing. But as we now know, Truth Social hasn't paid their internet provider, their platform provider, since March. Owes them like $1.6 million. But never mind that. The wannabe Twitter that Trump is now using, he was out there whining and complaining about what? About Hunter Biden. Because, hey, what else are you going to do? Distraction. And again, doing the whole relitigating of 2020, which I say, keep going, Donald. Keep it up. Doing a great job relitigating an election that, sorry, you're not going to undo. You lost. That's simple. But the scary thing is, what would a second term under Trump look like? What kind of extremism would we find? And we've already heard, this Schedule F idea that's going to bring patronage back, that you're going to bring in ideologues to come in and do the dirty work. And it started at the end of his term when he was president a couple years ago. Remember the name Tony Ornato? His name came up as in that testimony with Cassidy Hutchinson, where she was telling stories about what she was telling to Mark Meadows and about Trump going crazy in the limousine on the Secret Service and lunging in and all that stuff. And then he said, no, that never happened. Only it did. Evidently, he's now leaving the Secret Service, which is weird because if you remember, he left once to go work for the Trump administration, joining the White House staff as Deputy Chief of Staff. That was December of 2019. And then went back to the Secret Service, which was even weirder. It doesn't happen a lot. He's now leaving. Not sure if he's retiring or what's going on. Not sure if this has got anything to do with him having to testify possibly coming up. Not sure if there's an indictment coming, but yeah, interesting stuff. Now, as I said, the reality is, Lindsey Graham, for all of his talk about violence in the streets and all that stuff, you're not going to see him in the streets. But you know what? Joe Biden accurately pointing out what is going on with the Republican Party, somehow, according to Larry Hogan, the governor of Maryland, that's too divisive. Saying that the Republicans are fascistic, kind of pointing out the fact that, what is. This is one of those moments where you go, Larry, have you looked at your party? He said, this is the kind of divisive rhetoric on both sides that is really bad for America. He says, I've been talking about the toxic politics, and if Republicans are calling Democrats socialists and communists, and we have a president that the United States calling Republicans fascists, I don't think it adds to the overall discussion. Now, do I somewhat agree? A little bit. But the reality is Republicans right now, they're fascists. And they hate working people. Reality is, Republicans hate working people. And that can be seen no more than looking at the student loan thing that's come up. And I've said this for a while. The sad reality is we've been force-fed this idea that anything for working people is bad. Anything for corporate America is good. And it hasn't happened. It shouldn't be this way. Every industry in this country gets welfare. No one complains about it. The oil companies get welfare. Baseball and football, all the sports franchises, they get welfare and special protections. The sugar industry, the farming industry, you can go down the list. Here where I live in Pennsylvania, one of the most welfare-riddled state for corporate America. But we don't say anything about that You don't see people losing their mind. Donna sent me an email. She said, did you know that the bill Biden will pass forgiving student loan debt is unconstitutional? Check out the video of Pelosi saying that Congress can do that. She didn't send the video. I tried to respond back. She didn't. It bounced back to me. So if Donna, you want to send me another email, that's good. I'll take that. But here's the thing. One, it's not a bill. It's an executive order. And before Donna and the right lose their mind, Trump issued, 220 executive orders during his 4 years. Every president does it. It is what it is, and everybody complains about it. I agree. Congress should be doing this. I wish they would. Wish they'd get off their behinds and do something to fix this. And I'm not quite sure when she was pointed to the Supreme Court, the courts are going to decide this. Many of the courts filled by Trump appointees. So it seems to me if you put as much energy in going after working people, put that energy in going after the corporate welfare queens, maybe we'd be better off. Just kind of throwing that out there. But hey, Donna, I appreciate the email. And if you want to email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com is how you do that. If you miss any portion of the program, download the podcast wherever you get yours. You'll find ours. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1941. That's the day 2,500 steel workers at the Pressed Steel Car Company near McKees Rock, Pennsylvania, walked off the job. It was the second walkout in 2 weeks. Workers effectively shut down production of armor plate for the Navy, shell forgings for the Army, and railroad cars used to transport military material. The company had gone back on promises of holding a collective bargaining election. Steelworkers Organizing Committee Sub-Regional Director Abe Martin told the Pittsburgh Press that while the union had not called the strike, workers had, quote, walked out themselves because they are fed up with the company's discrimination against them. SWAC had been trying to organize the plant for years, but the company had engineered an election for a so-called independent union 18 months earlier when the complex was only operating at half capacity. Workers walked out at the beginning of the month and ended their strike on the guarantee that negotiations for a new election would begin. But when they returned, they found that some were stripped of their seniority while others were forcefully transferred to new departments. The day before, machine shop workers on the afternoon shift were fed up and dropped their tools. Word spread throughout the evening, and by early morning, picket lines were solid and production had come to a complete standstill. When the company tried to force reopening of the plant after Labor Day, 1,500 workers formed picket lines at the gate to stop scabbing. They returned to work 10 days later in compliance with a request by the National Defense Mediation Board. The NLRB rejected SWAC's election petition 2 months later, but SWAC persisted and won exclusive bargaining rights the following June.
Here's a hot topic for Labor Day: heat. It's been a hell of a hot summer, exploding the top off thermometers with triple-digit readings across the country. As we're learning, week after week of this debilitating heat intensifies wildfires, causes electric grids to fail, kills millions of wild animals, including fish, burns up crops, and concentrates toxic air. But there's another impact that draws little notice. Heat kills workers. Indeed, searing days of 95, 100, and 110 degrees are killing and injuring more U.S. workers each year than all the floods, hurricanes, and tornadoes combined. Those toiling outdoors, including farm workers, roofers and carpenters, airport ground crews, landscapers, road and street repairers, letter carriers, and trash collectors, are in the direct line of fire for this invisible, insidious killer. But working indoors is no better if there's no AC, for metal and stone warehouses and manufacturing plants become ovens. Then, welcome to climate change. 20 of the last 21 years gave us the hottest temperatures on record. Unsurprisingly, the yearly number of worker heat deaths in that period doubled. Also, researchers have determined that extreme workplace heat is causing about 170,000 people a year to suffer injuries on the job. The impact of heat is poorly understood, even by workers. A sudden heat stroke is not the only worry, for rising body temperatures can quickly fuzz the mind, weaken muscles, numb concentration. So workers fall, their hands get caught in machinery, they touch the wrong wire, etc. This is Jim Hightower saying America's power elites literally don't feel the intensity of this heat. So the richest country in the history of the world continues to subject millions of its people to senseless suffering and death, not even talking about this embarrassment, much less stopping it.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Catherine from Michigan sent an email during the break. She says, why is it not a problem that the Donald can be granted bankruptcy 6 or so times, millions of dollars of debt forgiveness, some even losing pensions because of his failures, but forgiving a tiny fraction of debt incurred by trying to better your life is putting Americans in jeopardy. She says Republicans are fascist narcissists. Thanks for what you do. You're right, Catherine. The reality is, Trump and like him. I look at Kurt Schilling, who tweeted out today that, my body, my choice, ? Your loan, your responsibility, my responsibility, ? This isn't loan forgiveness. It's a generation of lazy, unaccountable, uneducated children being covered by hard-working, debt-paying Americans. Now, that would be okay if Kurt Schilling weren't one of the welfare queens that owes the state of Rhode Island like $70 million for his failed business venture. Could forgive his debt, but nobody else's. And here to share some thoughts on, the Hunger Games scenario that's been set up right before our very eyes, because I've been enjoying watching the right lose their mind. And look, even some Democrats losing their mind over the fact that Joe Biden's giving a little bit of help to working people. That's why I have asked the guy who I view as the master of the Hunger Games. Billy Ray is a writer and director. He did the Comey Rule. You might want to go see that. Also, Oscar-nominated screenwriter for Captain Phillips and, yes, the Hunger Games. Billy Ray, thanks for taking time for us.
Always good to see you, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, it looks to me like we're in a kind of a Hunger Games scenario. There's only so many resources, Billy, and those students, they knew what they were doing. They should be saddled for life with these debts. No help for them. But hey, Donald and Kurt Schilling and corporate America, yeah, no problem.
So let me now end my career by taking on one of the sacred cows of American politics and take you back to 1980 when Ronald Reagan was running for president, okay? He asked a question of Americans, and I don't think America's been the same since. He said, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Not are we better off now, collectively. Are you? It was encouraging a personal selfishness. It was encouraging a certain kind of tribalism. It was the idea of, don't think of us as a collective. Think of us as just you. How is this working for you? Once that happened and became not only politically acceptable, but politically promising, I don't think America has ever recovered.
No, see,
idea that in other words, Kurt Schilling, if you were to ask him, hey, is it a good thing that more people go to college? Is it a good thing that more people of lower means go to college collectively? He'd say, yeah, it probably is. But that's not what he's thinking. He's only thinking about himself and his own particular demographic. And as long as we think in that tribal way, I think we're screwed.
No, I think we're screwed. I think Reagan era forward, we've been screwed. We've been on the collision course towards screwed. Hooray for me, the one with the most toys when they die wins. Greed is good. That whole mantra of the 80s, that's really what took us down the wrong path. And, Reagan forward, we've been accelerating down that horrible path.
That's right. And I don't know what the connection between that and the Hunger Games is. What I can tell you is,
well, I would argue the connection is resources are scarce. Mine, everything for me. You can fight over the scraps over there, but I'm going to hold on to what's mine, and evidently everything is mine. And the rest of you peasants can fight and decide who's going to die to save someone else. That's kind of the connection for me.
Well, I'll tell you, I've written a lot of true stories in my life. Whether it was about Comey or Captain Phillips or Richard Jewell or earlier movies, Shattered Glass and Breach. I like telling true stories. Something happened to me when I was working on the Hunger Games. Something in my brain said to me, this is a true story too. And I started to pretend that it was a true story. And I wrote that movie, or at least my draft of it, from a place of such righteous outrage that there was a government that would do that to children. That's, I think, why the script worked, because it felt like a true story to me. It felt clairvoyant in that way. And I do think that there is a war on children that the Republican Party believes is the right way to go. I think it's going to cost them huge at the ballot box, but we'll see if I'm right.
No, I hope you're right. But the part where this is the Hunger Games is what has been, the wealth class's main tool is pitting working people against each other. And I look at this student loan forgiveness thing, not as perfect, but a small victory for working class folks. Because look, I know a lot of working people who went to college and took on debt because they thought that they were that's the only shot they had. And I'll give you a quick story. Years ago, back in 2011, when Tom Corbett was governor here, wanted to cut billions of dollars from higher education and education. They had a big rally, and while I was standing on the Capitol steps waiting for my turn to speak to the crowd, I met a kid who said, "Look, this is my only shot. My grandfather wanted to go to college, couldn't because he got called to the war, and he went to work at the mill. My father wanted to go, couldn't go, ended up having to fight in Vietnam, and got mom pregnant, couldn't go, went to go to the mill. They led very good lives." He goes, "I don't have the mill to go back to." For many people, my generation included, we were told there's no plan B. So the only way into the middle class was taking on massive debt and being, victim to these predatory loan companies and a government that's benefited from these massive loans. So for me, while we are helping, some people who may be quote unquote undeserving, for the mass of people, I think this is a good thing.
It's a wonderful thing. It's a democratic thing. It's the right thing. When you were coming out of that commercial break, forgive me, I don't know the name of the woman who works with you.
It's my wife, Carol.
Carol, okay. So Carol was saying the thing about Trump and the debt. And what I need people to understand is that forgetting, the 200 years of America that existed before the 80s. Since the 80s, the system that is America is designed to make life easier for rich people. That's what it's there for. That's what the laws are there for. That's what the tax system is there to prop up. And the world works out for rich people generally, but it really works out for rich people if you have a system that is dedicated to make sure that rich people are protected. And the working class has to bear the brunt for that. That's the reality. That's what Joe is flying in the face of. That's why the Republicans are freaking out, as they are, because they're so deeply in the pocket of big ag, big pharma, big oil, big donors, etc. And if we are, think of it this way. Since 1980, the beginning of the Ronald Reagan administration, since 1980, $50 trillion in wealth has moved from the bottom 90% in America to the top 1% in America. It is the biggest migration of wealth in human history, and it didn't happen by accident. It happened under Republican and Democratic presidents, but it happened because this system was designed to make it happen. We're trying to undo that. We're trying to reverse that. Yeah, there's going to be some fucking kicking and screaming from the people who have benefited from it since 1980. Of course there will be. But we got to win anyway.
Listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Billy Ray. He's a writer, director. He wrote the Comey Rule, also Oscar-nominated screenwriter for Captain Phillips and The Hunger Games. You hear this often. The Republicans are in the pockets of big business and big donors. But the argument then is, well, Democrats are too, and to a smaller extent, yeah, there are corporate Democrats as well. The question then becomes,
Sure.
how do working class people then, who don't view either party as their champion, move forward? I mean, I look at Biden, and Biden wasn't my first choice, but he's been surprisingly really good on a lot of things, and legislatively gotten a lot more than I ever imagined passed. What's the way forward for working people in this moment?
Look, the fact is 2/3 of Americans want a choice beyond Democrats and Republicans. 2/3 of the country. Okay. And they come by that honestly enough. But there's no choice right now between the Republicans and the Democrats if you're a working person. Of course you have to support Democrats. Right now there is no alternative to that. There is no third party that actually is real. So you have to support the Democrats. If I look at the Democrats, I see an imperfect party that has just delivered on COVID relief, infrastructure, climate, jobs, inflation reduction, and Ukraine. Like, what's wrong with that party? That's a pretty good record to run on.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And this is where I think Biden's got to do more, getting out and talking to people and taking credit and doing victory laps and letting people know what has been done. And look, people like you and me talking about, how do we make policies that's going to move us forward? Because, you're absolutely right. I've been saying for years, Reagan era forward, it's been bad policy that's got us in this mess. It's
That's
been
right.
bad tax policy. It's been bad trade policy. It's been bad all the way up and down. The way forward is good policy. We need to elect people, working class people, into those places who are going to take care of other working class people. And yes,
I agree, but you look at Alyssa Slotkin, you look at Abby Spanberger, you look at some of the truly great representatives from the Democratic Party that are in Washington right now. That's what they're doing all day. They're fighting for the big middle. They're fighting for that working class. They're working for working people every day, and they're making their party better.
My point is,
let's elect more.
My point is, they need more. They need help. They need reinforcements. Bernie Sanders has been out there screaming this stuff for years. We need more Bernies. We need more representatives like the ones you laid out.
Look, I would challenge that. I'm not a giant Bernie fan.
Well,
but I believe the votes are in the big middle. I believe that's where the superstars of the Democratic Party actually live. I think that's how we beat the Republicans, and that's how we save America.
And is there a movement of that happening?
Absolutely. Wait till November.
I hope so. I have people telling me it's Rovember, and women are going to be upset.
I agree.
Women are upset, and they're going to go to the polls.
Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers of who's registering to vote and what party they're going to be voting for. Check it out.
So let me ask you this: the other side of this. Now, a lot of my Democratic friends not happy with Joe Biden because this isn't enough. Is this 10 grand for people without Pell Grants and 20 grand for people with Pell Grants and the 5% cap? Is this enough?
Democrats are famous for making the perfect the enemy of the good. I'm not interested in progressivism. I'm interested in progress. Everything Joe Biden has done has been progress. Let's take it. Let's take a win.
No, I'm with you. You take the wins and then keep moving and working towards more.
That's right.
What do you say to the other argument that we haven't done enough to fix the problems that got us into this mess? Because I look at my kids who are now going to go to college. The costs haven't come down. They're still going to have to take out loans. What do we do for the next generation?
We keep doing what we're doing. We try to dig ourselves out of the train wreck that was Trumpism for 4 years, now going on 6. We try to reestablish norms. We try to bolster our democracy. We try to make sure that people who actually believe in liberty and freedom are running the government. That's step one. And then once that's done, and we've cooled down inflation and calmed down our economy, and people are working and we've protected their jobs and protected their paychecks, then we start to work on the other stuff. Can't do it all at once.
Yeah, good
and
stuff.
There's no reason why, and no government ever has.
So let me ask you a personal question, because I'm a big fan of your work personally. The Comey Rule I loved. Hunger Games my kids are absolutely huge fans of. Captain Phillips was great with Tom Hanks. What are you working on now?
I'm writing a movie about January 6th.
Wow. just take on something not overly controversial and not overly important. Good for you.
Exactly. Why not?
Will this be complete with the convictions? Because there've been a couple of convictions, a little bit lengthier sentences here lately.
We'll see if I can get it made.
There you go. Well, I wish you the best, and it's always great talking with you, Billy. Good stuff, man.
You too, Rick. Take care, man.
Appreciate the time. Our good friend Billy Ray. Look, at the end of this, a win is a win. Celebrate it. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. For working people of the talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1907. That was the day that became known for the Quebec Bridge disaster in Canada. Workers were building a cantilever bridge over the St. Lawrence River. This was not an easy task. The river was 2 miles wide at its narrowest point. The river was deep, moved quickly, and was icy in the winter. But in the late 1880s, businessmen in Quebec who wanted to keep up trade with Montreal decided the river had to be spanned. The project did not begin for more than a decade due to a lack of funds. Finally, the Canadian government supported the project to improve the nation's railway infrastructure. Theodore Cooper, a respected American bridge designer, was signed on for the project. Despite concerns about the bridge's design, he never visited the site due to illness. 86 men were working on the project that fateful day. Their workday was drawing to a close when the bridge suddenly collapsed. 75 men plunged to their deaths. Some of their bodies were never found. The bridge collapsed because of design flaws. The official report of the disaster noted that the loss of life, quote, might have been prevented by the exercise of better judgment on the part of those in responsible charge of the work for the Quebec Bridge and Railway Company and the Phoenix Bridge Company. Unfortunately, it was not the last tragedy trying to cross the St. Lawrence. After the bridge collapsed, the Canadian government took over the project. A partial collapse on that effort killed 13 more workers in 1916. The bridge finally opened in 1917. Its completion came at a high price, costing $22 million and 86 lives. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. I go back to, and Billy Ray hit on a theme that I've been talking about for years. Ronald Reagan is responsible for a lot of the policies that put us right where we are. And me as someone who says, look, the assault on our tax code is his number one accomplishment. When he took office, the top marginal tax rate in this country was 70%. By the time he left 8 years later, it was 28%. We're talking a massive redistribution of wealth. And you go, well, where did all that money go? So if we weren't collecting all of those taxes, if you weren't bringing that in to pay for education and healthcare and all of those things, where did money go? Well, one, slash and burn. This was a guy who, understand, when I was a kid growing up in the 70s, little programs like a school lunch program in the summertime for poor kids existed. We went to the local public school, Purtis Elementary, and kids lined up and got a free hot lunch. Wasn't much, little thing of beans and wieners, maybe a grilled cheese sandwich, something. It was something. They slashed that. Gone. Why? Tax cuts for rich people. So you're talking massive redistribution of wealth in ways that really began to tear society apart. This idea of the welfare queen, which they never found, this idea of the small family farmer who lost their farm because of the estate tax, and then got everyone to believe, and I'm still, to this day, it still drives me nuts when someone goes, I shouldn't have to pay tax when I die. And I'm going, are you worth $11 million? Well, no. Well, then you're not going to pay tax, you moron. Stop it. And this is what the right understands. If you regurgitate something often enough, people are going to pick up on it. one of the greatest memes ever, death tax. One of the greatest things they ever came up with. Because everyone hates taxes, even I hate taxes. And you shouldn't have to pay taxes when you die. Oh, death and taxes, everything's avoidable. But no, you've heard the rhetoric. And they play on this. Why? Pit us against each other. So that they go, we're going to cut taxes without thinking about who are you cutting taxes on? Am I getting a tax cut? No, not you. You don't make enough to get tax cuts. And we need you to show up to those crummy jobs so you can keep paying your taxes. It's for rich people because they sold us on this idea. And this is the mind-blowing part of this and why the Trumps of the world love the poorly educated. We're going to give rich people more. We're going to give them all the money because they're smart and they know what to do with it. And even as a kid, I go, I don't know, that doesn't sound like a great idea. It sounds like, if they know what to do with the money, they're going to make more money for themselves, which is exactly what they've done. And look, do I begrudge them of that? No. I get people all the time, well, you hate rich people. No, I hope someday to be wealthy enough to not have to worry about paying bills. I would love to be wealthy enough to fund this program. That's not happening. This is one of those moments where you've got to ask the question, who are we cutting taxes on and for what purpose? And are we going to get that bang for the buck? We were told we deregulate. Things are going to be great. We give tax cuts to rich people. It's going to trickle down. All this stuff, all false. All BS. But yet, hey, we want to make America great again. And you ask those MAGA people, you ask them, when was this country great? In your view, when was it great? And they'll go, 1950s. It's great. 1950s was fabulous. You go, and what was the 1950s? High tax rates, really high tax rates, high unionization rates, lots of government intervention. What about it do you think is great? Because you want no taxation, you want no labor unions, and you want no government. I'm confused at what you think reality is. And then you get the rest of the world was destroyed. We couldn't be like that. Yeah, we could. What we did is we exported our horrible ideas around the world so that we destroyed their systems and their ability to have the kind of middle class existence that we could have all enjoyed. We could have had a different reality. Could have had it. But the wealth class of this country, no, can't do that. We want more. We want our power and control back. We want to undo the FDR years. We want to undo the New Deal that for the first time in human history gave working people the ability to make their lives better. For the first time in human history, said it's the government's job to encourage collective bargaining so workers can fight for better wages, hours, conditions. And what the wealth class do? Oh, division. Oh, union members are lazy. Oh, unions are just fat cats. And, all of the nonsense. And working people ate it up. Because division works. Someone else got something that you didn't get. Works. Why should you have health insurance when I don't? Instead of having the flip thought of this is, you've got health insurance. Hey, how do I get that? You've got retirement security. Hey, how do I get that? Your kids can eat at the end of the month. Hey, how can I do that? You've got a roof over your head. How can we do that? We're a screwed up country. And you go, well, who's to blame? Well, we're all to blame. But you go back and you think about that era, that Reagan era. That's when it was. And you think about, the massive tax cuts he gave rich people while simultaneously saying the only way we can save Social Security is by putting an age, a really far out age on it, and then the massive tax increase on working people. Massive. Nobody ever talks about that, about the Reagan era. The fact that he raised taxes 11 times. Nobody talks about that. Lower taxes on the rich people. And, to kind of make it look good, had to raise taxes on who? Yeah, you and me. On working people. But we never talk about that part of the Reagan legacy, do we? No, we never do. We never talk about the destruction of the working class. We never talk about the deindustrialization. We never talk about the fact that bad trade deals were birthed under his leadership. NAFTA was birthed under Reagan, fully negotiated during the years of George H.W. Bush, and signed into law by Bill Clinton. There was a seamless move. The only person who seemed to get it was that big-eared guy from Texas. John, second sound. He was right. There was John, second sound. And you know what it was? It wasn't just jobs going to Mexico. It was the cash coming out of your pocket and into that of the wealth class. It was that standard of living that this country had been known for being sucked away from the working class. And then you wonder why people are angry. You wonder why the baby boom generation, which was handed everything by the greatest generation who fought for the most prosperous working class in history, handed them high unionization rates, handed them opportunity, handed them a college system where they didn't have to really do anything. You work a summer job, couple hours, you can pay for college. My generation got screwed. I'm one of those kids who went to college for a year and said, you know what? I'm not taking out another loan. I'm not going to saddle myself with massive debt. I went and got a union job. But you know what? I had that opportunity. And this is where we need to start giving kids opportunities again. And the opportunity to go to college without a lifetime of debt. I think it's that simple. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you don't download the podcast wherever you get yours. You'll find ours from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. That simple.
Small green plants lined the bed of what used to be a frontier lake between Switzerland and France. It's existed for 12,000 years, but now it's relegated to just a small stream.
More than half of Europe mired in worst drought in centuries. Climate change action is way more popular than Americans realize. Plus,
a country famed for its oil resources, committed to going to sustainable mobility.
Saudi Arabia pushes to become a global electric vehicle leader.
Really?
Yes.
All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
There is no climate crisis. It is a hoax, and fossil fuels are a wonderful thing.
It is 2022, and that is Virginia Congressman Bob Good. Hey, Virginia voters, it's 2022. Can you please vote that guy the hell out of office? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, from heat and drought in the U.S. to heat and drought in China. Now we're back to heat and drought in Europe.
Yes, unfortunately, more than half of Europe is mired in drought. According to a new report from the European Commission, 64% of the continent is in severe or exceptional drought, the highest category, and it is the worst drought in at least 500 years, and likely more. The combination of record heat and drought has triggered water shortages across Europe and is contributing to a widespread increase in fire danger across the EU. Drought, heat, and fires are all worsened by man-made climate change.
Yep, they are.
Here in the U.S., new projections from NOAA hold a warning for coastal communities that are seeing flooding on sunny days at high tide.
You mean like Florida?
Yes.
Then I'm sure they'll ignore it.
NOAA's latest outlook predicts that sunny day flooding, which today occurs on average nationally about once every 2 months or so at any given spot, could hit as frequently as every other day by 2050. That's within the lifetime of a traditional 30-year mortgage originating today. New Jersey is crafting new regulations to restrict development in coastal flood zones based on future climate projections,
Good.
not past flood data.
Good.
By 2150, sea levels in Jersey are projected to be 5 to 19 feet higher than today.
Don't tell Florida.
A disturbing new study finds that living near natural gas fracking wells increases the risk of childhood leukemia. Researchers at Yale School of Public Health found that children in Pennsylvania who grew up roughly within a mile of a fracking well are twice as likely as other young people to develop juvenile leukemia. But some good news. New modeling shows that Democrats' newly enacted landmark climate bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, will not only save consumers money and lower energy costs, but will also deliver massive benefits and cost savings for public health. By reducing fossil fuel air pollution, the law will prevent up to 4,500 premature deaths every year by 2030 and hundreds of thousands of asthma attacks, with the biggest gains in communities of color that are disproportionately burdened by industrial pollution.
Well, that is good news.
In other news, a new survey finds that climate action is far more popular than people in the U.S. realize.
Is it?
2/3 of Americans support government climate action, but everyone is underestimating how much other people support climate policies, incorrectly believing that their neighbors don't support action. The researchers found this false perception occurs across all states and demographic groups. Even Democrats don't know that climate policy is very popular.
And why don't Democrats even know that?
The researchers at Boston College partially link it to decades of right-wing media demonizing climate policy.
Go figure.
And it matters, because when people assume something isn't popular, they don't talk about it, leading to what the researchers called, quote, a spiral of silence that helps obscure the deep, widespread support for climate protection measures across the board.
Of course, they don't talk about it. They think others don't agree with them, and they're afraid to speak up about it.
Finally, big moves in electric vehicles. Saudi Arabia has launched a major initiative to become a big player in the global electric vehicle sector, investing billions to develop a domestic minerals mining industry and an EV manufacturing and processing supply chain for batteries and cars. Bloomberg News reports that the petro-state hopes other countries will swap out their dependence on Saudi oil for dependence on Saudi battery materials, a sector that China currently dominates.
Chalk me up as dubious. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So you may remember last week we were talking about the Presidential Emergency Board and the numbers that they came out with for raises, an extra personal day, an extra day off with pay for the railroad workers, kind of an enticement so that maybe they won't strike. And I've been saying, maybe this is what we need. Maybe general strike kind of talk, kind of what we need to make sure that working people get better wages, hours, conditions, that standard of living we were talking about in the last hour. Well, here to give us some updates and maybe share some thoughts on what the Presidential Emergency Board proposed and maybe how it's being received. And maybe some of the other issues that come along. I've asked Jared Cassidy to come talk with us. Jared is the Assistant National Legislative Director over at the Smart Transportation Division, the SMART Union. Jared, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So walk me through what the proposal from the Presidential Emergency Board is. I remember a pretty substantial raise being proposed, an extra day off, some other possible language. What did they come out with?
So basically, we're looking at a 22% raise, 24% compounded over a period of 5 years with a retroactive back pay going back to July of 2020, if I recall correctly. And so basically, you're looking at 24% for the 5 years. You are right with the one personal day that they're offering. And they were changing the benefit package for health and welfare to, instead of a 12.6 employee percent contribution, it's now going to go to 15. One of the more significant aspects of that is the cap that we had on the previous agreement is being removed per the PEB recommendation, should it be ratified or even accepted at this point. which would mean that it would be subject to the 15% across the board, depending on insurance and how it fluctuates, and so there would be no cap. And a couple other little things, but that's pretty much the highlights there.
So when I'm hearing a decent raise, but potentially losing a good portion of that towards benefits, right?
Yeah, so, to look at it on the surface, 24% is really nothing to sneeze at on any given year. But the time period we're in is different. We're coming out of the pandemic. Our folks have carried this country through the pandemic. We kept the railroad moving. They worked as essential employees day in and day out, literally 24/7, risking their family's welfare and their own welfare to make sure that the railroad never stopped. And so there's compensation that needs to be rewarded, I believe, for their efforts and what they did to contribute to this nation coming out of the pandemic. But then you look at inflation as well, and the rate it's going, it takes a big chunk out of that 24% too. And then just as you said, when you factor in the benefits package with it, that 24% has been whittled down quite a bit, and it doesn't come close to where we believe our members want it to be and where we want it to be for them. And so we still have a long way to go when it comes to wages.
Yeah, because I looked at it, and when I talked about it last week, I got an email saying, how could they turn that down? And I'm going, well, I don't know. On its face, it sounds reasonable, but what are the details? I need to know more. And now that you've laid it out, it isn't as rosy as it sounds, especially when you start talking about the fact that these are massive trains. These are miles long, and you've got two guys now running them, and they want to whittle that down to just one. And eventually, I assume it down the road, they're going to want to just have nobody on them at all, which is a horrible, horrible, unsafe idea. But, walk me through this as well. I mean, this idea that for, it's been over a decade now, they've been trying to get one-person crews. Where are we at with this?
If you don't care, let's step back a little bit and let's talk about what's driving the railroads right now. And there's a business model that a gentleman named Hunter Harrison pretty much coined in the railroad industry back when he was working for the Canadian railroads, and then came to CSX. I want to say 2017, somewhere in that time period, and began this precision scheduled railroading business model, which is basically doing more with less, or as we see it, less with less. And the name of the game is to cut resources and to manipulate a tool that they use to influence Wall Street, which is called the operating ratio, which is nothing more than basically saying it takes this much effort to make this much money, for lack of a better way to put it. And so they get rid of all the resources they can, which includes manpower, which we've cut about, I shouldn't say they've cut about 30% of the workforce in the railroad industry. They put thousands of locomotives in storage, and they've done all these different changes that have made life so much harder on our membership. But when you start looking at this operating ratio, this golden little nugget of a number that makes Wall Street happy, it makes the investors dance, and it makes the railroad CEOs act for their puppeteers, if you will, to entertain them and to make them richer on the backs of our membership. The only way to get it lower at this point is to start looking at automation and different technologies that are quite infallible, I would add. They fail regularly. And so now they're foaming at the mouth to start running these trains with one person, which is just inherently dangerous. Just on a fundamental side, to have one person alone on those trains is just dangerous for a litany of different reasons. But yeah, I mean, their ultimate goal is to get this operating ratio down, and now the only thing they have left to do is get the people out of the cab of the locomotive. They're wanting to go to one. Ultimately, they're going to want to go to zero, and they really don't care what the communities or the people that have to intersect or interact with the railroads think about it, as long as they're making money.
No, I mean, it's crazy. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Jared Cassidy. He's the Assistant National Legislative Director for the Smart Transportation Division. You can check out their website, smart-union.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can check that out. But I remember when I was a kid, this going back into the 70s and early 80s, there were multiple people on the trains, because I got to think, having two people on a train, one at one end, one a couple miles down track at the other end, I don't know how safe that is. What happens if, the person at the front of it has a health condition, is sick, something happens, gets knocked out. You now have a train that, walk me through that.
So things can happen. I mean, you're basically hitting on one of the most basic fundamental issues or arguments that we have when we talk about crew reduction. And there are and there have been incidences, that health-related incidents that have occurred, where one of the other crew members has had to intervene to make sure that person was safe and well, or to take care of them, provide first aid, whatever it may be. And so if the engineer is alone in the cab of the locomotive and something were to happen, there are some systems in the cab of the locomotive that theoretically can stop the train. That doesn't mean anyone's going to be watching it for a while. It doesn't really, I don't know that it's ever really been practiced or done to find out what the effects of that would be. And the other issue here is trains are growing astronomically. Again, to that operating ratio, part of the way to get that lower is to make trains longer. So theoretically, you're using less resources to move more goods, if you will. So, the trains are now longer, they're heavier, and if that person were becoming incapacitated, really the effects of that are going to be, I mean, who really knows what's going to happen? It may stop, it may derail on its own. I mean, the train may go into emergency, which is a brake application where all the braking effort becomes a maximum braking effort, which is very hard on a train. And if it's even longer and heavier than it typically is, those dynamics become even greater and more likely to fail. So you have that aspect of it. But when you're talking long trains and the issues that go on, you have more block crossings. We have trains going over 5 miles long now. We had one just a couple weeks ago in Nebraska, I believe it was over 5 miles long. That train moving at maximum speed is going to take 15, 20 minutes to clear up. If you're in your home and your child is diabetic in need of an ambulance and we're coming through your town, guess what? You're going to be sitting there praying to God that ambulance is going to get through at some point in time. And if a mechanical failure occurs, you may very well find yourself waiting on an ambulance that never happens, and unfortunately, or never arrives. And unfortunately, that scenario is played out. It played out in Louisiana, where the train was blocking a crossing, and a gentleman passed away because he couldn't get to, because the ambulance couldn't get to them. And so, that's another offset of this two-person crew issue. And then you were talking about the rear end of the train. When you're 2, 3, I shouldn't say 2, but 3, 4, 5 miles long, the radio communications, the telemetry that keep the engineer aware and the conductor aware of what's going on in that train, if the brakes are acting right, if it's still in one piece, they don't communicate so well anymore. So now you've got trains going down the road and you're really not sure what your rear end is doing. You get out to 4 or 5 miles long and that communication becomes even more difficult, and everything else is exaggerated and exacerbated simply because of the size of these trains. And to think that one person would be responsible for it, and then to realize that if a train does come to a stop, the way the rules are set up now, an engineer is not really able to protect his train by setting up what we call handbrakes. So they couldn't depart the locomotive and then go take care of the train to get it ready so they could walk the train, so to speak. So if they're in the cab of the locomotive, they're going to have to, again, theoretically, wait on a conductor from who knows where that might be assigned a truck that may be stuck in traffic, may be stuck in the mud trying to get to some of these tracks, and wait for them to show up to take care of the problem. If it's a mechanical failure, if it's an emergency, if it's a derailment, that person will now be remote. And I mean, if it's a hazardous materials release, you're talking about some significant consequences from a decision to just make more money on railroads that are making billions of dollars every single quarter. They're making record profits. And the two-person crew is what brought them the richest and safest era ever in the history of railroading. And now they want to throw that away or gamble it just in the hopes of making more money, and they really don't care what the consequences are.
It all comes back to greed. Now, again, I go back to when I was a kid. I remember because I can admit this now because I know the statute of limitations is well expired. We're talking, 40 plus years ago, when as kids we used to jump on the trains, as all kids do. We wanted to play hobos. But I remember they had, several people who were on the trains who were there, doing specific jobs. One of them is shooting salt guns at the kids jumping on and off the trains. No, do they have salt guns anymore?
No, not that I'm aware of.
But you had multiple people, because most of us who are my age remember you had multiple people on these trains. You had multiple people to make sure that they were connected right, they were safe, all this stuff. And now you've whittled down to just 2, and now potentially 1 and then 0 for an industry that is making, as you have said, billions in profit every quarter. And it makes, for the average person, it makes no sense, Jared.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it's the greed has no end, and what they're doing to our membership at this point is just sad and it's pathetic. They've cut us down so far that they're putting all of the burden on fewer people, and they're expecting them to do more. They've created attendance policies, so they cut the 30%, like I talked about earlier. 30% of the workforce is gone. So what do they do to make sure they have availability when it comes time for train operations? They bring in an attendance policy that only lets someone have 1 day off a month. 1 day off a month on a schedule that they work 24/7, 7 days a week. They get 2 hours notice when it's time to go work on a train. So if I get to bed at midnight and I'm 3 times out on my list, I don't want to get too lost in railroad jargon here, but say I'm third out and all of a sudden something happened, and now where I was expecting to be called at 8 a.m. in the morning, now I'm getting called at midnight or 2 a.m. I've had a hard time trying to get rested. I'm not adequately ready for it. I take my train, I do my job, I go to the hotel, and then I end up getting stuck in the hotel for 36 hours and then come home and do it all over again. And it's just, the greed never ends, and these absenteeism policies are absolutely relentless. They don't care if you're sick. They don't care if your child is sick. They don't care if you're tired. There's no forgiveness at all for what our members are going through right now, and that's the biggest part of this agreement negotiation round. Is money used to always be the priority, and maybe some of it's generational change. Maybe it's not. I don't know, but these guys are tired of getting the crap beat out of them. We need quality of life fixed in this round of negotiations. That's what this agreement's about. The attendance policies have got to be negotiated. And we have got to get these folks some time to take time off, take care of their families, and to have a life and still make a money and keep this country moving.
There you go. So last line of questioning I got for you, how do we help? I know that there's a potential coming up in the days ahead that there may be a strike, there may be some kind of action. I've heard things all over the place, and I'm not going to say that I have an answer, and I'm sure you don't either. Where is this going, and how can we help in a positive direction?
Okay, so there's 2 ways we can help, and there's 2 separate issues here. So on the national agreement front, one, we just need to spread the word. If the railroads come to a stop and we do strike, it's vitally important that the public understands that we're standing up for ourselves, we're standing up for our members, we're standing up for our families. We are tired of not being able to care for our loved ones. That's what this is about. So if the trains do stop and there are some delays with some things, please join us in our fight. We want folks to be with us and to understand what's going on. We do not want to harm this country. The supply chain is collapsing. The railroads are a part of that collapse. All of this is contributing. And all we want to do is we want to do our work. We want to service the customers. We want to make sure everybody's happy. And we want to be compensated for that work and treated fairly. We don't want to be harassed, intimidated, or beat to death, so to speak. We just want to do our job, and we want the public to understand that what we're doing is trying to make sure that the ship is rightened so that the supply chain will be protected in the long run. The second issue here is a 2-person crew, and the biggest way you can help is for anyone that believes a 2-person crew, or a reduction in the 2-person crew to 1 person or no persons, that could be a threat to the public, could be a threat to the infrastructure, could be a threat to the environment. You go to regulations.gov, type in train crew, train safety crew size, and it will take you to a regulation. And Rick, if you don't care, I'll send you a link afterward. Maybe you can post it somehow.
Please do.
And that link will take you to where you can comment. You don't have to leave anything complex. Just let the Federal Railroad Administration, let the United States government, particularly the DOT, know that you support 2-person crews. And that way they're aware that the public is with us on this issue, and this administration's with us on this issue, and just let them know where you are and that you support us, and that will do worlds for us.
Good stuff. Jared, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the input. Please come back in and keep us up to date on what's going on.
Yeah, thank you.
Good stuff. Jared Cassidy. He is the Assistant National Legislative Director for Smart Transportation Division. Check out their website, smart-union.org. We'll get links out on social media. Going to take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I got to tell you, listening to Jared brought back horrible memories for me. As he's talking about, the train folks being on call and only having 1 day off a month, I didn't realize it was that bad. I mean, that is horrible. I was on call for about 11 years. When I was driving a truck, but in my case, you work 6 days, you got 48 hours off. You work 7 days, you got 58 hours off. You worked 11 days, you got, I think it was 72. You could eventually work to get days off, so you had some home time. I didn't realize it was as bad as it is for the railroads. Now I do know it. I've known a number of people who've worked on railroads over the years, and it's when you're out, it's horrible. They're running you around all over the country, it's bad. But to be on call and only have 1 day off a month is insane. Now think about this for a second. You get home, you just made your run, however 12, 14 hours, whatever it takes. You go home, you get your rest, you got your 10 hours off. You're up, you're ready for work. Now you're up, you sit for 8 hours, you sit for 9 hours, you sit for 10 hours. Nobody's calling. Now you start thinking about, maybe I should go back to get some sleep because they may call. And as soon as you fall asleep, guess what happens? That's right. They call. It happened to me a lot of times. The difference between me as a truck driver and those folks on the railroad, I could pull the truck off to the side of the road, take a nap if I needed, and the DOT would protect me. My union would protect me, would be able to protect me through our contract because we had language in it. The train, you can't pull the train off the side of the tracks. Kind of hard to slam on the brakes there and pull off and take a nap. I really concerned about this. Really concerned about the idea that you've gone down to 2 people, which they've been trying to go to 1 for, like I said, over a decade. First time I heard about this was back in 2013 when we did our labor history tour. And our friends at the BLET, they were saying, look, this is coming. They're fighting for this. They want 1-person crews. And, as Jared said, used to be 5. You used to have 2 people up in the front. You used to have 3 people in the back, and they would move around. You had, if someone was sick, someone needed help. So there was reinforcements. And yes, of course, there was someone to shoot the salt gun. And what is the salt gun of which you speak, Rick? Kids like me, back in the 70s, we used to jump on and off trains. Hobo kind of life was kind of something that people thought of as, there's a lot of country songs about hobos. Probably why I'm not a big country music fan. But we used to jump on the trains and we would, run them out, miles away, and then we would jump off and jump on the other one coming back. Great thing about hitchhiking on trains, it's hard to get lost. Unless they went through a switching station, which you quickly learned if you got lost once, not to allow it to happen. But we used to do that. We would jump off and go somewhere, and we'd come back. But if the people on the caboose saw you, they had a salt gun, and if you got shot with that, it hurt. Imagine having like rock salt piercing your behind. I actually had a friend that happened to, which is why I know it's got to hurt because he screamed for a while. But yeah, I'm in favor of returning to having more people on the train, more jobs for working class folks, and more ability for people to have a good work balance. Especially when you're talking about an industry that is making billions of dollars as Jared said, per quarter. Not per year, per quarter. This is one of the most lucrative industries in the country, and yet they are squeezing the quarter until the eagle screams or until the worker screams. So, when this came out, I said, there's my mindset is that they're going to go on strike at some point because this is, opportunistically speaking, this is the right time. I saw the numbers and said, well, I don't know. Maybe these are good numbers. It's a lot of money. Evidently not resolving the work-life balance thing. And I think all of us coming out of the pandemic are going, I want to work to live. I don't want to live to work. I've always been the live to work guy. I've always been the person who, and the pandemic has changed me a bit. In that I don't work as much overtime. I don't spend as much time working as I used to. And I think as a country, we're moving in that direction, which I don't think is a bad thing. We could be at another moment, like the fight for the 8-hour day, when we fought for 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. The idea of having family quality time and not losing wages, making it where that 8-hour day was paid the same as a 12-hour day, that you could make a living and exist and survive on that wage. I think we're back at a point like that. Maybe. Like I said, I'm loving the organizing that's going on around the country. Loving the fact that workers are finally talking about sharing in the wealth that their labor creates. Maybe we're there. It'll be interesting to see what happens on the railroad. And I'm sure we'll get Jared back to talk about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back with our good friend Bob Ney. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1907. That was the day that became known for the Quebec Bridge disaster in Canada. Workers were building a cantilever bridge over the St. Lawrence River. This was not an easy task. The river was 2 miles wide at its narrowest point. The river was deep, moved quickly, and was icy in the winter. But in the late 1880s, businessmen in Quebec who wanted to keep up trade with Montreal decided the river had to be spanned. The project did not begin for more than a decade due to a lack of funds. Finally, the Canadian government supported the project to improve the nation's railway infrastructure. Theodore Cooper, a respected American bridge designer, was signed on for the project. Despite concerns about the bridge's design, he never visited the site due to illness. 86 men were working on the project that fateful day. Their workday was drawing to a close when the bridge suddenly collapsed. 75 men plunged to their deaths. Some of their bodies were never found. The bridge collapsed because of design flaws. The official report of the disaster noted that the loss of life, quote, might have been prevented by the exercise of better judgment on the part of those in responsible charge of the work for the Quebec Bridge and Railway Company and the Phoenix Bridge Company. Unfortunately, it was not the last tragedy trying to cross the St. Lawrence. After the bridge collapsed, the Canadian government took over the project. A partial collapse on that effort killed 13 more workers in 1916. The bridge finally opened in 1917. Its completion came at a high price, costing $22 million and 86 lives.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Here's a hot topic for Labor Day: heat. It's been a hell of a hot summer, exploding the top off thermometers with triple-digit readings across the country. As we're learning, week after week of this debilitating heat intensifies wildfires, causes electric grids to fail, kills millions of wild animals, including fish, burns up crops, and concentrates toxic air. But there's another impact that draws little notice. Heat kills workers. Indeed, searing days of 95, 100, 110 degrees are killing and injuring more U.S. workers each year than all the floods, hurricanes, and tornadoes combined. Those toiling outdoors, including farm workers, roofers and carpenters, airport ground crews, landscapers, road and street repairers, letter carriers, and trash collectors, are in the direct line of fire for this invisible, insidious killer. But working indoors is no better if there's no AC, for metal and stone warehouses and manufacturing plants become ovens. Then, welcome to climate change. 20 of the last 21 years gave us the hottest temperatures on record. Unsurprisingly, the yearly number of worker heat deaths in that period doubled. Also, researchers have determined that extreme workplace heat is causing about 170,000 people a year to suffer injuries on the job. The impact of heat is poorly understood, even by workers. A sudden heat stroke is not the only worry, for rising body temperatures can quickly fuzz the mind, weaken muscles, numb concentration. So workers fall, their hands get caught in machinery, they touch the wrong wire, etc. This is Jim Hightower saying America's power elites literally don't feel the intensity of this heat. So the richest country in the history of the world continues to subject millions of its people to senseless suffering and death, not even talking about this embarrassment, much less stopping it.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the publisher of Denise D'Souza's book, 2,000 Mules, it's being reported has issued a full recall of the book. And I'm going, what is a full recall of a book? How can you do that? And it's being reported that part of it is because it's total crap. And I'm going, wait a second, hold the phone. There are a lot of books written that are total crap. Especially, coming out of, look at, Bill O'Reilly wrote books, Glenn Beck's written books. I mean, there have been tons of right-wing blather. What is it that's so special about Denise D'Souza's book? Other than he's a world-class, never mind. But the book's being a total recall. I can't wait to see the response from the right on that one. Censorship. I'm waiting for it. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. Our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thank you, Rick.
So, have you ever heard of a publisher going, "Hey, we want our books back"?
No, they had an image of this, and it just has full recall from the publisher. And of course, the book's election fraud ideas have been widely debunked. Now, of course, there's election fraud ideas debunked all over the place, but it's very interesting that this one was recalled.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, like I said, there are tons of books out there that are chock full of lies. Why is this one special?
Well, like anything, too, you can, I've written a book, and it's according to, it depends if it's fiction or nonfiction, but mine was according to my point of view of what happened with the Abramoff scandal and things and different things in D.C. And with this one, he has the point of view, of course, of the premise of election fraud, but that's nothing new. I mean, that's out there all over the place.
Yeah.
So I'm really wondering, I was trying to look into other articles, of what they were saying about why it was postponed, and then they put that it was abruptly postponed due to a publishing error.
A publishing error?
A publishing error. But again, I don't know that you drag a book back due to,
You mean like all 270 pages were written in error?
Written, yeah, maybe.
Like, oops,
maybe.
I changed my mind, and here's the real truth this time. Kind of,
right.
i.e. Winston Smith.
So, on the first one just says that it was pulled back, and then the second one says publishing error. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we'll
find out. Maybe he'll get attention of this. Maybe he won't. I don't know. Who knows?
There's part of me that wonders if he didn't ask for it himself. I don't know.
That's why I was just saying that. Is this some type of thing for you to say, "Oh, wonder what's in there," and now I've got to read it. Maybe it's a tactic. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. Here's some good news. One of the Proud Boys extremists, a guy from Maryland, over 4 years in prison for his part in January 6th. Is this enough? Evidently, he was within feet of Chuck Schumer. and Schumer's security detail said, "Hey, there's trouble," and hightailed it the other way. But he got over just about a little over 4 years.
Right. He encountered Senator Schumer, and I can't remember how. Well, Joshua Pruitt is his name. I think he's about 40 years old, and he came face to face with Schumer. I don't know how many of the attackers came face to face with members. Maybe a few, but obviously he came face to face with Schumer, and then the security detail when that happened took Senator Schumer down the hallway, and then they changed their evacuation route for him, due to the fact that Proud Boy was there, and there were probably other people coming that way. So he gets 4 years. Well, look, you and I talked about this on your show when the first sentencing came down. It wasn't really harsh enough on the plea deals because otherwise, people say, "Oh, okay, I can do a plea deal and just get 2 months and ankle bracelet." So I think the stiffer the sentences, the better it is for the rest of the cases. I don't know how many cases are left, but there's quite a few.
Yeah, there's more jail time to come.
Quite a few cases.
Yeah, good. Speaking of January 6th, the name Tony Ornato back in the news today. Former Secret Service assistant director who then became Trump staffer, then back to Secret Service, evidently retired today.
Right, he left the agency. He was, the assistant, I think the assistant director was his actual title, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Secret Service's assistant director. And then he went to become, deputy chief of staff for Trump, and then went back to the Secret Service, which is weird. Does that happen often?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't happen a lot at all. And it's kind of interesting where how he went back and forth. And then, he left the Secret Service, on Monday, and it was just, a couple months after he had his testimony by the former White House aide who said that Ornato had told then President Trump that he was irate, and then of course, he was covering for that. So
yeah. And is he going to have to testify?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Is he going to have to testify again? I mean, is he going to have to? Are they going to bring him back in to end up testifying because of the testimony of Cassidy Hutchinson? Is that going to come? Especially now that he's a private citizen, taking advantages of the private sector, which I got to wonder if that's going to work for Trump.
I don't know. He denies that he told Hutchinson that the president grabbed the steering wheel, but at the time, he told Hutchinson, so they might bring him back, but I mean, who knows what he's going to say. He'll probably hold to the same line because, look, he's now left the service. Can we maybe imagine that he will have some kind of security job, should we say, maybe for a former president?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is where my mind goes. He's probably going to go work for Trump because I agree with Karl Rove. And I thought I would never say those words in my entire life.
I want to write this. Get Carol to write this date down.
Exactly. I honestly never thought I would agree with Karl Rove, but I think it's the Secret Service that turned him in. Mm-hmm. Trump, that is.
Right.
So this is maybe Trump going, I want a Secret Service guy who isn't beholden to the United States and the Constitution and the rule of law. I want a guy who's a little on the shady side. This could be that, in my view.
I mean, look, I think Hutchinson's testimony, I know that her testimony was very, very creditable. We all saw, how her demeanor, all the things that she went through. It was a painful process. She made that clear. She was a believer, in what she was doing. And so I think she's, completely accurate. And then he did the cover, and then he retires, and now he can be in the private sector and still deny that any of it happened and have a job.
Yeah. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman, political analyst, and good friend of the program. And I'm going to lay this out. Someone who over the years I've become very good friends with, someone I like an awful lot. But I got to tell you, Bob, always not a fan of the whole contract on America, which right now what is being told is there's a new contract on America coming, and this makes me even less thrilled. I'm curious of your thoughts on the Republicans working on a new contract.
I don't think it'll work. I really don't. There's been talk about the contract with America over a long time. They need a new one. They were talking about it in May, and in one of the national publications, Madison Cawthorn. We know that name, don't we?
There's a name I'm going to forget real soon.
We all want to. We have a lot of images when we say Madison Cawthorn in our minds.
Yes, yeah.
But
thanks to Republicans. Thanks to the dirty tricks of Republicans who threw him under the bus.
Yeah, he was something else. And he had the new contract with America. But I just don't think that can be produced again. It was, something that was, for the most part, living under the laws of the rest of the country, the balancing the nation's budget. Nobody wants that in a contract anymore. And so I just don't see where there's going to be any viable plan. Plus, it's too late for this year. And this election year, I never thought it was going to change as much as it did in the last 60 days, but it's going towards some type of bizarre collision in November. And looks like the Senate for the Republicans is out of reach, and the House is going to be iffy.
You mean Rovember?
What's that?
You mean Rovember?
Rovember?
Yeah, that's what my friends are calling November. It's now Rovember. Really? It's to get Republicans to remember the Roe decision and.
Roe. I'm sorry, I'm slow tonight. Roe. Okay, I thought you said roll.
Yeah, Rovember.
I've got you. Well, that's part of the political collision that's occurring. But I just don't think there's any timing left for some type of contract with America. Number one, not sure everybody could get behind it.
Yeah.
Number two, it's just not the same era, not the same attitude, not the same ability to have any togetherness in the political system either for the Republicans.
Yeah. See, now you'd be surprised to learn that I'm actually a balanced budget guy. I believe that we should have budgets. We should pay our bills. We shouldn't go into debt unless it was absolutely necessary. I'm not against running deficits, but we should pay them back. I've always believed that. Now, getting to that place, that's where the difference is. I've advocated for returning to a tax code like we had under a good socialist president like Dwight David Eisenhower. That seems to me to be a pathway forward. My Republican friends, and probably you too, not in favor of that. But I think the wealthy need to pay their share.
Well, believe me, I complain constantly to friends, publicly, etc., about Bezos. I'm just not singling one person out. I can put more in that category.
Sure.
I pay my taxes, and he didn't pay for years. And I look at that, and I'm thinking, why do they escape? Everybody else has to pay,
yep.
In certain categories. And why should he escape? Oh no, I'm for everybody paying their fair share.
And again, it's not that I don't like Jeff Bezos. I don't know him. It's not that I don't like Elon Musk. I don't really like Elon Musk. What I know of him on the Twitters and elsewhere. It's not like I hate these people because I get this accusation all the time. I hate the system that allows them to walk away with untold wealth and riches while the working class of this country continues to struggle. Just my view on it.
I agree 100%. Look, you sit there and you make whatever, 40, 50, whatever you're making, 50, 60,000, and I'm not going into the 200,000 category. I'm going into that category, and you pay taxes.
Yep.
You'll pay a certain percentage, your school taxes, your state taxes, and your city taxes, and 1% of your salary, whatever. And if you look at the history of Bezos, and I pick on him a lot, but if you look at his history and others, they escape it.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know who can disagree with that. I know they do.
No, I mean, I've always said, Bob, behind every great billionaire is a great crime. Bezos' great crime is he cheated taxes. I mean, Amazon was really a tax cheat at the beginning because you didn't have to pay sales tax. Right. A lot of people went there because, hey, I can buy the book that I don't go to Barnes and Nobles or Books A Million or the corner bookstore and buy because, hey, I can save the sales tax by going to Amazon and just have them ship it here and it'll be cheaper. That was the great theft. That was the great crime right there, and cheated states out of tax revenue all across this country and helped defund roads and bridges and schools and healthcare and all of the things that we need. I have a problem with that. Now, do I have a problem with him? No, I have a problem with the system that allowed it.
Well, if you look at the 2020 profits in the corporations, at least 55. I'm just picking out 55. The large ones. 55 of the largest corporations in America paid 0 federal corporate income taxes in their filings. 0. Now, how can anyone justify that? I mean, it's amazing.
No, that's something, again, we've talked about numerous times on this program, and the reality is you don't hear people getting all that upset about that, but boy, we talk about giving some kids who wanted to go to college and make their lives better $10,000 or $20,000 or cap their payments at 5%. And you would think that the end of the world was coming. It's crazy. Last question I got for you, because I know you're big on China, on what's going on over there, and you're one of the people that I respect on this. Sunday, evidently, our Navy sailed 2 warships through the Taiwan Strait area. I guess this is the first time that's happened since Pelosi went to Taiwan back in early August. Is this a big deal?
I mean, I think it's a chest-thumping move. We sent 2 warships through the Taiwan Strait, and of course, China was over there doing drills, et cetera, being angry, spouting off, shooting missiles. So we have 2 of our ships that entered it since the speaker's trip, and those were guided missile cruisers, and they made the voyage through the waters. And so I think it's a sign back that, look, we're here. We don't want anybody to be stopped going through here. We want to go through the corridor and have transit to continue. So I think it's just a move to say back to the Chinese, we're here and we're going to be here.
Yeah. Now, the last question on this I've got then is, as we're moving to build, chip manufacturing capacity in your state, there in Columbus, as Japan's trying to do the same thing, as the as Europe's trying to do the same thing. Isn't it trying to maybe everyone get away from Taiwan, knowing that eventually China's going to go in there, or am I reading too much into this?
No, I think you're correct. I mean, look, at some point in time, and I think we can compare this to Hong Kong. They had the policy of Hong Kong that they have of Taiwan, that Hong Kong was theirs, and there was a British document, of course, for Hong Kong that gave it back, and people thought, it's not going to go back, it's developed on its own, it's a free economy, it's pure, no port fees in Hong Kong, pure, capitalist, and it went under the control of the Chinese. They took it, and of course then they squeezed after they took it, because that's what they do.
Yep.
We're not going to kill the cash cow, and then they squeezed when too many people in Hong Kong wanted some freedom. I think eventually, I'm not sure it's going to be militarily, but eventually I think China will, put its fingers deeper into the ownership of Taiwan. But even on top of what Taiwan produces, if anything that COVID has taught us, it's the supply chain. And you can look at just different factories across the United States, different products that were created. And if they had 256 parts, 250 could be from here. The other 6 weren't, and they were from China. And as a result, we couldn't function like we were supposed to. So if anything we've learned off of COVID in the supply chain, in a good way, is that we need to have independence. That doesn't mean, protectionism or complete isolation, but obviously China got what it wanted, permanent free trade status, and when it did, it thumbed its nose at us. It did what it wanted. It squeezed Hong Kong, and why take a chance? I don't think you're overreading too much. Why take a chance on anything that China can potentially control, especially items like chips, things that are now in our electronic world crucial to us every single hour that we exist, with every product we have practically.
Yep, especially with the ability to write code in there and do who knows what, and gather who knows what kind of, it's a bad scenario and something, again, I'm thrilled that we're reclaiming. But Bob, as always,
thank you.
Great stuff, my friend.
Thank you.
Our good friend Bob Ney. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Wrap things up after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1996. That was the day the workers at the Lusty Lady Strip Club in San Francisco made their final push to make their case for the right to join a union. They made history by winning the union vote 57-15. SEIU Local 790 led the historic campaign. What started the union drive was the windows at the private booths where the ladies performed. The windows had one-way glass. That meant patrons could look in, but performers could not see out. They worried that the men could videotape them or take photographs without their permission. When management refused to change the windows, the women started talking union. Soon, other workplace issues arose as the women furthered their union discussion. One woman recalled, "We started to discuss other problems at work, like being forced to come in when you were sick." She went on, "Our first thought was to organize a petition, but we were really concerned about individual dancers being scapegoated and fired because that happened on a regular basis." Another participant in the union drew on her personal background as a reason for getting involved. She noted, "I had been raised to support union efforts and the workers' cause. I hadn't ever worked at a place where there was any sort of struggle to be a part of." The women ran a successful campaign to unionize. Despite winning the vote, management dragged its feet in negotiating their first contract. The women went on strike, and management locked them out. Few men dared to cross the picket line to enter the club. And within a few days, management capitulated and returned to the bargaining table where the women signed their first contract.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. A couple of quick responses on the Twitters, and if you want to follow us, make sure you follow us on Twitter at Rick Smith Show. We do try to get some of the folks who tweet at us a little attention and talk about some of the things that they threw out at us. Adrian says shootings became a phenomenon. Parental leave is how you eradicate school shootings. A baby treated at a daycare would be labeled neglect if at home. This is one of those things that, pointing at Reagan, going, it was Ronnie who did this, because she says personally, if you look at legislation and dates, you believe that Reagan is indirectly responsible for school shootings. Said the legislation and taxation of daycare and that he introduced led to massive increase in middle class kids attending daycare. And 15, 16 years later, what'd you have? Now remember, when I was a kid, you had latchkey kids. They came home to nothing. Communities raised kids. The neighbors were looking out. Then we shoved them all into daycare because both parents then had to work. And again, it goes back to the policies that attacked working families to where you could no longer live that middle class dream of having the one bread earner and the one parent staying at home to raise the children, which was the foundation of the American dream. The picket fence, the car in the driveway, the vacations, the life that got better, kids sending the kids to college, knowing that your kids were going to do better than you. And then you worked hard, yes, but that work hard, play by the rules, get ahead thing was there. And I believe a lot of people think it's broken. Now Murray Burns 14, he writes at us, "I've paid my debts, paid my kids' college. I'm pretty lazy. I've been fortunate to have good opportunities and connections, never quite bought into the whole hard-working thing. We're the only big-brained animal that works. Happy to help people. And again, you ask the question, when did we become the society that says, no, we're not going to help each other? No, we're not going to reach our hand out, especially to people who are trying to make their lives better. Now, remember, my Republican friends are like, no, if you're lazy and you're not going to work, we're not going to help you. But if you're deemed worthy, maybe we'll help. These are people who were sold on the idea, hey, now look, I remember going to high school back in the 80s and them telling us, look, if you want to live a middle-class existence that your parents have, you're going to need a college degree. Because those factory jobs, those construction jobs, those union jobs, they're going. And we were losing tons of them at the time because of the policies of Reagan, because of the neoliberal agenda and all of this push towards corporate America and the wealthy reclaiming their rightful position of power and crushing the working class. So we saw it happen to our parents' generation. Where, you know what, we bought it, took on massive loan. My generation's the generation that had giant loans for the first time. Giant. And now we've done it to our kids and the next generation. And now there's a president who's saying, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should help. And it's interesting watching the people spasm. I'm proud of Joe Biden. Good on him. Love to hear your thoughts, though. What do you think of the student debt forgiveness? Is it enough? Is it too much? Is it not enough? What should we be doing to fix the situation going forward? I'd love to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you get yours, you'll find ours from Stitcher to Podbean, iTunes, all of those places. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.